Such Shishi Shimad, His Divine Grace Vaya Chanana, the Bhaktivedanta, Goswami Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananda Gauti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya, Srila Vedas Thakur Ki Jai. Ram Se Go Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Srivasati Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gaur Swayam Kund Radhagunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavanam Ki Jai, Charadam Ki Jai, Navadikdam Ki Jai, Jagadathasami Ki Jai, Yavunavai Ki Jai, Shimadi Lasiri Ki Jai, Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories, the assembled devotees, all glories, the assembled devotees, all glories, the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda. Okay, so we're looking out to Vinandusha, Nanjana, Shlakaya, Chakshur Midikam Gaya Tasmai Shigurave Namaha. Do you want to move the computer closer to me because of this thing? Or?
Right now, because I don't have mouse.
Okay, I'm sure. So now this is part of the disciple course, and for those of you who haven't been here before, we have two parts of the disciple course. One is the theory, which I am presenting, and then there is the practical exercises, which will be presented by Manjari Gopi. And for those who are of the select 20, sounds interesting. For those who have been taking the course all along with the idea that there's only 20 of you here, of getting the certificate, either because you're going to be taking initiation in the future, or because you may be teaching the course, or because you just want to get the certificate to understand even more and deepen your relationship with your gurus, which is Prabhupada. Then that second part will be given where? In some room somewhere? In the room where we were. That's a secret. It's a secret room, and everybody knows the room where we were. You're supposed to be there, and those of you who don't know the room where we were, you're not supposed to be there. It's a secret room, okay. So this first half is open for everyone. The second half is for those very special Vaishnavas or Vaishnavis who are completely surrendered. So we're going through these different chapters in this particular course. Yesterday we talked about very interesting things, relationship with the spiritual master, choosing the spiritual master. Today we're going to do 3 units, beginning with the unit of Guru Puja. Please don't pronounce Guru Puja as Guru Puj. It means something different that we cannot mention. You know, if you don't know what it means, then ask someone else. But Puja means to worship. Puj means something different. Anyway, so let me start this describing the first time I went to Guru Puja of Srila Prabhupada, which is a very interesting experience. It was in Los Angeles in 1972. And I was standing, sorry. There's a picture of this, actually, that you've seen. I was standing behind Prabhupada as he was receiving the Guru Puja. And Prabhupada, it was like watching the best, let's say, choreographed, in the sense that every move that Prabhupada made was practically a work of art, you know, dance, drama, whatever it is. Because Prabhupada was so much absorbed in love of Krishna that Prabhupada did not make any move in his body that did not relate with his love of Krishna. Think about that for a second. So I was standing behind Prabhupada, watching him. And then also the devotees, the children got a chance to offer Prabhupada directly the flower, and then they got a cookie. And I know some of the ladies made believe that they had children so they could get cookies. They grabbed someone else's child, even though they had no child and they weren't married. They said, "Give me your kid!" And so they could get a cookie from Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada looked at everybody, and just with the motion of his head like that, everyone started jumping higher and higher and higher. And there was one devotee, Brahmananda, who probably weighed about 150 kilos, maybe a little less at that time. And Prabhupada got him to dance, and everybody, when you got someone that big dancing, everyone starts dancing, singing. And people were crying in front of Prabhupada. I mean, it was just like an amazing experience. And later on, I stayed behind the Vyasa. Prabhupada was playing the cartels. And just watching Prabhupada play the cartels, I mean, a Nityasiddha devotee like His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada has a perfectly spiritual body. So every aspect of the body is worshipable. That's called the vapu, or the spiritual master. His body means instructions. And I was just looking at the two things. Prabhupada playing the cartels, and he would play it so rhythmically with his fingers would go out each time the two cartels touched. And then also I was looking at the hair in Prabhupada's ears. I was told that if someone has long hair coming from their ears, it's a sign of intelligence and spirituality. Maybe Daddy Baksha knows about that. But anyway, I was looking at Prabhupada and just like, what can I say? I was in trance. I was looking at Prabhupada's ears and Prabhupada playing the cartels. It was an amazing experience. Being with Prabhupada was like going back to Godhead. It was like you didn't have a material body anymore. You were with Krishna in Krishna Loka, and you forgot about all your problems and the material world and everything, family and everything like that, just by being in the personal presence of Prabhupada. Because Prabhupada's personal presence and the pure devotee's personal presence makes a place of pilgrimage. A place of pilgrimage is called a tirtha. A tirtha means a crossing place. Basically, that's the definition of the word tirtha, like a bridge, something like a bridge. Tirtha, the same meaning. So you can cross to the spiritual world just by being in a place where a pure devotee is. Pretty good, isn't it? Of course, it's also like the sun. With the sunshine, you can get many different effects. Some of them are helpful, and some of them are harmful. For example, if you get too much sun, you get sunburn, and some people get skin cancer, melanoma, as a result of that. And if you don't get enough sun, then you can have vitamin D deficiency and so many other problems. So Prabhupada said being with a pure devotee or being with the deities is like the sunshine. You can harm or get help depending on how you relate to it. And Prabhupada also said it's not good for the neophyte devotee to be too much with the spiritual master. This is interesting. Because the neophyte devotee will tend to see the spiritual master as an ordinary person after some time. Like he's eating prasadam, all right, he's eating like I'm eating. He got angry, oh, that's a defect. But the pure devotee, like Srila Prabhupada, he gets angry because Krishna's being blasphemed or he's defending his movement for some reason like that. So one has to be very, very careful. As we chanted the prayers of the morning, Vananvi Sarvadanamante. Sarvadan means caution. Like in India, you'll see the street signs that say Sarvadan, which means caution, but nobody follows it. In India, Sarvadan means go faster. And exercise no caution. Red light means go through it. Stay in your own lane means go in the other lane. But in spiritual life, Sarvadan, Vananvi Sarvadanamate means just being cautious. So this Guru Puja that we do for His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada and our spiritual master in appropriate circumstances is to help us develop the right attitude towards the spiritual master. While the spiritual master is present on the planet, we do this Vapu Seva. Vapu means the form, the manifest form of the spiritual master, or great devotee of the Lord. And that Vapu Seva helps us cement in our consciousness that we are our servants. of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through his representative, the spiritual master. So the external things that we do, like the deity worship and everything like that, help us understand. If we didn't have deities, for example, we'd probably be impersonators. You know, because we wouldn't see Krishna. We wouldn't see that Krishna is a person. So even psychologically, it wouldn't have the same effect. The same thing with the spiritual master. It's important to be able to see, to perceive the physical presence of the spiritual master to understand that you're a servant. You know, it's harder to say that I'm a servant of Narada Muni, for example. You know, we are servants of Narada Muni, but isn't it hard to picture in your mind, well, I'm the eternal servant of Narada Muni? But when you have the manifest presence of the spiritual master, and Srila Prabhupada, because that's why we have the Murti of Srila Prabhupada, so we can actually have that consciousness, I am Prabhupada's eternal servant. Murtis and deities are very important in that respect. Okay, so we're going to talk about Guru Puja today. Remember to pronounce that word properly. These are the different lessons in relationship with the Guru. We're going to try to go through all three of these. Guru Puja, which means to worship, the formal worship of the Guru. Guru Seva means the service of the Guru. Service of the Guru can be either Babu or Vani Seva. And then we'll talk about Babu and Vani Seva, or the physical worship or service to the body of the spiritual master. It's not only the Guru Puja, like Prabhupada had a servant, Shruti Kirti and other servants, who would massage Prabhupada every day. It's interesting that Prabhupada would have a massage that went on sometimes for an hour and a half or 2 hours in the evening and an hour at midday. So why did Prabhupada do that? I mean, first of all, for his health. Prabhupada said he attributed 3 activities to his good health. It causes good health: the walking, the massage, and his medicine. But secondly, to engage his disciple in that particular service. And many times the Guru will engage a disciple in the Vapu Seva, even though he can do it himself. Even though he can do it himself better, and it's less of a headache. And I know I have that personal experience that in many cases, you know, I'd rather do things myself. I can certainly iron my clothes and cook for myself. It's a lot easier. Prabhupada said if you cook for yourself, you'll like it more than anyone else's cooking, which is true. But there's the idea of engaging others in serving Krishna. Okay, so let us go on. Guru Chaga will be tomorrow. Guru Chaga means renouncing your Guru under certain circumstances. Don't think, oh, I'm going to get an opportunity to renounce my Guru and look for someone better. This is under only certain extenuating circumstances. Okay. So let's go over the course principles and values again. The important things we want to imbibe in this course. That's what I mean. Important aspects, things that should be always in our consciousness. And Prabhupada is our preeminent Siksha Guru. I think everyone knows what that means. Preeminent means most important, most prominent. And because of that, we remain faithful to ISKCON and the Parampara. Because Prabhupada said, if Prabhupada is our preeminent Guru, and Prabhupada said, if you love me, you'll stay in ISKCON and cooperate, then we don't have an option. Otherwise, we'll be saying indirectly that Prabhupada's not our Guru. Because if the Guru says something, like the example was given previously, Prabhupada said to some devotees, you should follow the GBC. And the devotee said, no, we only want to follow you, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, yes, but I'm telling you to follow the GBC. And they said, no, Prabhupada, we can't do that. So, Prabhupada said, just see. They don't want to follow. So Prabhupada said, stay within ISKCON, serve ISKCON, help push this movement forward. So, allegiance to Prabhupada. Whoops. Go back. respect for the authorities in ISKCON and senior Vaishnavas. Take your time in selecting a Diksha Guru, and also your Shiksha Gurus too. Stay fixed in your vows. We talked about this yesterday. The things that would impede our staying fixed in our vows, remaining very cautious, being afraid, like Prabhupada said, you Western boys and girls, I think it's most of you here, are not enough afraid of Maya. We talked about things yesterday like being careful when you're with someone of the opposite sex. Don't be alone. Because there's fire and butter. You mix fire and butter, and what happens? And you get ghee. And therefore, hopefully you become a ghee hasta after that. rather than a batonsi. That means one of, anyway, we'll do that means. So commitment to vows. Having good sadhana and conduct, acharya, faith in the Guru's instructions, inquiry, just missing a letter, inquiry, humility, and service, and favorable association, purity, inclusivity, and cooperation. And ultimately, Namaruchi, we have, and Jivadoya, assimilation and dissemination of Srila Prabhupada's teaching. So these are the core principles. So let's talk about Guru Puja now. And I think most of you are familiar with the translation to this particular verse. That the spiritual master is honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servant of the Lord. I don't think we need to explain that further. Aradhananam sarvesham vishno ram tasmat padataram devi taliyanam. The Lord Shiva, that's a verse spoken by Lord Shiva, where Lord Shiva is saying that of all types of worship, the best type of worship is worship of Vishnu. But even better than that is the worship of Vishnu's devotees. So there are even some injunctions that if you're doing deity service and a Vaishnava comes to the temple, even if you're just worshiping Radha and Krishna and there's no one to receive the Vaishnava, you can neglect that deity service to receive that Vaishnava. Very, very important. Vaishnava Seva is more important than Murti Seva, or deity worship. There's that interesting story in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where this great devotee of Lord Nityananda came to visit Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami's house. What was the devotee's name again? He was like an Avaduta. Does anyone remember? I don't remember right now off the top of my head. No. Anyway, he was a great devotee of Lord Nityananda. And the Pujari was doing deity worship, and he didn't receive him or pay attention to him. And this great devotee, he said, now I have seen another Romaharshana Sutta. Who was Romaharshana Sutta? Does anyone know? What's that? He was a Ritva? What? Yeah.
He offended Lord Balaram and Lord Balaram killed him.
With a piece of kusha grass. So in other words, by that particular story in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, we find the illustration that one should even stop the deity worship if great Vaishnavas come in. Very, very important. So, in the beginning, before I read this, I'm going to explain to you. In the beginning of the movement, we didn't have the Guru Puja for Srila Prabhupada on a daily basis. But when Prabhupada saw that we hadn't really imbibed the principle of Guru Puja, Prabhupada instituted it. Because in the Gaudiya Math, they never had a daily Guru Puja for Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. But because in our Western culture, we don't really have that sort of item that we worship someone or respect someone. And we're very disrespectful in our Western culture. Like, we'll call our parents by their first names sometimes. We'll say, "Hey, Joe! Hey, Mary, where's my meal?" I mean, sometimes we do that. But in the Indian culture, there is an aspect of paying respect to your superiors. As Krishna says in the Gita, that austerity of the body is to worship your superiors, like the guru, the mother, the father, etc. So if you ever watch any Indian films, you'll see that the children actually bow down and touch the parents' feet. And they say, "Mata Shri," that means, "My dear, opulent, respectable, worshipable mother." Pita Shri, like that. And even between husband and wife, there's these respectable terms. The wife will actually call the husband sometimes Swami. Not that she wants him to take sannyas, but Swami means master. Swami, Prabhu. And of course, the husband will call the wife Priya, which means, does anyone know?
Dear.
Dear, which establishes a very sweet, loving relationship. And you find when you just use people's names, it doesn't establish the same sort of relationship. That's why we use the terms between each other, like Prabhu, or if you want to use the feminine, Prabhi. That's a little controversial. Prabhu, Prabhi. Anyway, so we use these terms that establish a respectable relationship between them, because Prabhu means what? Master. It's, you know, of course we can misuse it. "Hey, Prabhu, get over here right away, Prabhu. I hate you, Prabhu." But we should be thinking. So what I'm saying is that these external manifestations, you may say they're just external, help us establish the right mentality. When we use a particular name or we do a particular type of worship. So Prabhupada understood that we had to do this sort of worship to revive the understanding that we're his servants. And that the Prabhupada wanted servants, but he wanted us to imbibe the principle of worshiping the Guru himself as Krishna's representative. So Prabhupada had us do it every day, and Prabhupada was upset when devotees didn't come to Guru Puja. He insisted on it. So his Guru Puja, which we're... It's not for me to read that. You know, it's not self-aggrandizement, it is real teaching. You sing daily, what is that? Guru Mukhapadma Bhaktya, Tutite Kodiyakya, Bas. This is the translation. I tell you frankly, whatever little success is there in the Krishna consciousness movement, I simply believe what is spoken by my Guru Maharaj. You also continue that, then every success will come. And you see, amongst all of Prabhupada's godbrothers, Prabhupada had the most faith in Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's instructions, which were to go and preach in the Western world and preach in English. Prabhupada gave that, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur gave that instruction to all of his disciples who could speak English. And Prabhupada was the only one who actually carried it out fully. So, there's formal worship of ISKCON gurus. This is interesting. Because, let's go back and tell the history. When Prabhupada left the planet, there were 11 people who took up the service of being gurus. So, in general, it wasn't understood what their relationship was with the founder Acharya as we understand now. So they thought, even though they were about 25 years old, or 26 years old, they thought, you know, to be guru means to do exactly the same thing as Prabhupada did. And so that means simultaneous Guru Puja with Srila Prabhupada at the same time. This is after Prabhupada, with Prabhupada's birthday. At the same time in the temple, and to have a permanent Vyasasana there, right next to Prabhupada's Vyasasana. Was anyone around in those days? No, none of you. One or two were around. And it had to be as opulent as Srila Prabhupada. At the same time, as opulent as Srila Prabhupada's Guru Puja. And not only that, you ran into trouble when you had more than one guru your temple at a time. And you ran into a lot of trouble if you had a GBC meeting, where all 11 of them were there. Because you needed 11 Vyasasans, 11 pujaris, 11 RT trays, and 11 pujaris. Pretty good. So I remember there was one GBC meeting. Actually, whenever the gurus met, I ran away. I didn't have meetings because I thought the whole thing was ridiculous. But so we had one meeting in the temple that I was temple president of. It was in Miami, Florida. Temple room was roughly half the size of this half of the room. So there was no room for any devotee in the room except for the guru and their vyasasans and their pujaris. It was interesting. And, I mean, there were other things like the gurus thinking they were like Prabhupada. They wouldn't leave the room unless they had a kirtan of all their disciples. As I remember going to one guru and saying, "It's time for Bhagavatam class, Maharaj." And he said, "No, I want all 100 devotees outside my room chanting my name before I leave my room." So it was interesting. I mean, just to be honest, little personal story. What I did is I said to one of the gurus who I was working with, I said, "I got to go someplace where there's none of these gurus." You know, I didn't want to leave ISKCON. Some people left ISKCON because of that. Because, I mean, you really, in order to be a member of ISKCON, even if you were a Prabhupada disciple, you had to surrender to one of your godbrothers. One day they were a godbrother, the next day they were as good as God. Pretty good. So therefore, I said to him, "I got to go somewhere where there's none of these gurus." And so I looked at the map of the United States, where there's none of these gurus. So there was one place, and I said, "I'm going there." Of course, it was part of the guru zone. So I said to the other guru who was part of the zone, that I'm going to go and just like pass through this place and give a few classes. You know, I was lying. So I went there. He said, "Okay, just pass through." So I went there, opened up a temple, and he called me up a few months later with these other gurus, and he says, "You came to my zone, and you didn't tell me you were going to open up a temple. These people were supposed to be my disciples." I mean, there weren't any people until I went there. How were they supposed to be your disciples? Because there's no one preaching there except for me. Anyway, so we worked it out. Later on, there was apologies all around. You know, "I'm sorry, you know, it went to my head," etc., like that. So that was what it was like in the early days of ISKCON. Then we started. I guess I should tell the story. Related. Then we started to have a revolution meeting. I got to tell this story. It's part of the course. And if you take the course with me, you're going to get some interesting things that are not in the book. So then we got together with some other sannyasi and leader of godbrothers, and we decided we got to throw these guys out. Because the gurus had actually taken over the GBC too. Because the GBC had like 30-something members, and there were 11 gurus, and the 11 gurus became more powerful than the GBC, which was not Prabhupada's plan. And so we decided to meet secretly every 2 weeks in a place called Tuaco, New Jersey, where we had a temple. And with this revolution, we came up with our revolutionary manifesto, throw them out. Eventually, there was a group of 50, and we wanted to change everything, and change the whole GBC, actually. And so many of the gurus, seeing it coming, joined us. What did they say? If you can't beat them, join them. So they joined us, and we had this whole revolution, and then of course, then I decided to be a guru. You know, you can't beat them, join them, so something. So, you know, you go to, like Prabhupada said, if you go to Lanka, you become Ravana too. So, but it was an interesting time in ISKCON when Prabhupada's position as the founder Acharya was being like diminished or in people's eyes, and people were usurping the position of Srila Prabhupada, and the movement could have split at that point. Fortunately, the GBC and the reformulated GBC and the devotees got together, and we actually were able to pull the movement together and reestablish Prabhupada in everyone's eyes as the preeminent guru for everyone. But that was a time when the movement could have actually split. It was a very dangerous time for the movement. So in order to keep the unity in the movement, we need to keep Prabhupada in that position in our eyes constantly. We need that Guru Puja every day for Srila Prabhupada. So we do have to worship our individual gurus, both Siksha and Diksha. Actually, a Siksha Guru, Siksha, I'm mispronouncing the word, using the Yiddish pronunciation or something else. A Siksha Guru is also worshipable. You can have a picture on your altar. I mean, of anyone, any guru in our disciplic succession who inspires you, you can have a picture of Narada Muni if you want on your altar. So, but as far as the arti, if you're a pujari, when you're doing arti in the temple, a pujari keeps a very small picture. There's only something see. And on the table, tray near the altar, or on the side of the altar, and they remove it after they've done their puja, or after they've done their worship of the deities. But it's important to keep a picture because that is the guru who gave you Diksha, or the mantra by which you're worshiping the deity. That's the guru who inspires you in Krishna consciousness. So that's the etiquette. The etiquette is to respect all Vaishnavas who help us in Krishna consciousness, both Siksha and Diksha gurus. This I mentioned. This is GBC law, ISKCON law. The picture of the Diksha guru should be smaller in size than the picture of Srila Prabhupada on the altar, and it should be removed after the arti. Of course, we don't have guru police. Guru police means, we don't have people who are just policing, kirtan police, and you say Radhe, Radhe, you get arrested. That's a funny video. Anyway, so, and this should be followed because it gives us the unity that we need in our movement. As I mentioned, in one of my previous classes here in the Gaudiya Math, they had so much disunity, they were fighting each other, punching each other in front of the deities because they had different gurus and they wanted to chant different gurus' mantras in front of the deities. Pranam mantras. In our kirtans, we chant Prabhupada's pranam mantras, not the guru's pranam mantras. Prabhupada's pranam mantras. Before this guru reform took place, we used to chant the guru's pranam mantras in our team. And that was very divisive for our movement. We can offer, this is optional, if the devotees want to offer Guru Puja to their gurus outside the temple room. They can do it in their own room or in a private place. And if the temple authorities are following the law, they should provide facility for the devotees to do that. If they wish to do that, it's optional. I do not have my disciples do that because I just want them to concentrate on Srila Prabhupada, but it's nothing wrong with it. If the guru feels the need, the guru can recommend that for the disciples. Right. And here's a big one. For a while, when we had these 11 people, and then also, when we expanded the gurus, and I was part of the problem too at that point, that everyone had to have a pada or a deva name. Whether it was Chaitanya Pada, and this pada. I forgot my pada name. It's been so many years. I don't even know my second pranam mantra. It was some pada or some weird name. But everyone had to have a special pada name or deva name. So nowadays, we just use a generic name, which is Guru Dev, Guru Maharaj, rather than saying which pada are you a follower of. Pada, of course, means fake. And of course, we're all followers of Prabhupada. Prabhupada, that word means the master at whose feet all of the master's sit, Prabhupada. Or it also means the master's feet, two different things like that. So it's very important not to have specific Pada or Dave names. I mean, right now we're dealing with this. Even on the internet, some of the older gurus, not older in age, but older being gurus, are still using these different names. And it creates a divisive atmosphere with the devotees. That, you know, if you can have a Dave name, what about... That's how I felt when I first became a guru. I thought, wow, they have Dave names or guru or Pada names. I want one too. What's my Pada name? Yeah.
By the way, at that time, who was giving these names? Who were disciples of Guru?
Probably the gurus.
From now on, I'm his Pada.
You're a Prasanta Pada. And then we would joke. I mean, it became, I tell you, for me, because it was so upsetting to be considered second class, because, you know, I wasn't one of the gurus in the beginning. I just, you know, I have a natural tendency towards joking, which you probably don't know about, haven't discovered yet, but I would just do, all right, what's your name? Pada. And as I mentioned before, sometimes the gurus, I would have to say their name of the Premadwani, and I would just say it in a joking way, like a cat call or a cow call or something like that. They'd get so upset that one in particular used to throw water on me after I said it. Because I couldn't take it seriously. I mean, it was really cultish. I mean, what can I say? It was crazy. It was like being in an insane asylum, from my perspective. Because here you had 25-year-old young men being as good as God and treating everybody else, including their brothers and everything, like menial slaves. It was just too much. As you see, I was traumatized by it. So, this is my therapy.
Prabhupada said one purport of spiritual master should be addressed as Prabhupada or Vishnupada or some title, you know. So, what is the problem with addressing such a spiritual master privately in circle of disciples?
Theoretically, there's no problem. But practically, when we're talking about, you know, theoretically what Prabhupada said is absolutely a fact. When we're talking about keeping an institution together, it's going to be hard for the disciple just to keep it to a private, in a private location. As you see on the internet, you know, people start using all these different names, and it does create divisiveness in the movement, or a feeling that my guru is better than your guru. So, in the name of unity, it's better to forego using these different terms, because that's a higher principle. The higher principle is love and trust, cooperation. And for the sake of cooperation, I mean, traditionally, in the Vedic system, the gurus would all have their different ashrams, they'd be independent, and they certainly wouldn't work under an ecclesiastical body. So, but to carry out the mission of Srila Prabhupada. See, it's very important as a disciple to understand the mood of the spiritual master, not just the literal instructions. Like about Rupa Goswami, it stated, Shri Chaitanya Mano Vishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gada Mayam Dadata Swapadantikam. That Rupa Goswami understood the mind or the heart of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and therefore was able to institute the desires of the spiritual master. So, that's the important thing. You know, what is Prabhupada's heart? What does Prabhupada want? What would please Prabhupada more? So the GBC, in light of that, has come up with these different rules, regulations, suggestions, instructions. Okay. I don't think so many people are using Pod or Dave names anymore. Not so much. I don't think it's an issue at this particular point. Also, well, welcoming Vaishnavas, ISKCON temple should be modest. For example, you can offer a sitting place, offering prasadam, and something to drink, a garland, and some little kirtan. Yes?
Just a few days ago I saw sannyasi coming to temple on the internet, of course, on Facebook. And they wash his feet with it.
As long as it's not in the temple room?
It was in the temple room.
Oh, it was in the temple room?
Yeah.
And it wasn't his Vyas Puja?
No.
Okay, we'll write him a citation. Call the police, 911. It's not all right. It's not all right.
It's part of wedding tradition. So in the private home, is it okay?
Yeah, in the private home, somewhere else other than the temple room, and don't make it obligatory. That's another problem, is that we make it obligatory. I get these letters all the time. Please write a Vyas Puja offering for my guru. And, I've been writing Vyas Puja offerings all year long. And it's not that I don't love the guru, but, why should I feel pressured to do such a thing? So if it's held in a public place, people are going to feel pressured. That's the point. I mean, you have to understand the principle behind it. Let's say if the guru comes, and I just, I like the guy, but, he's just not... doesn't turn me on, so to speak. Inspire me, he's a nice guy, high five, everything. But, why should I feel pressured? Jai, Maharaj. Hello. I shouldn't feel pressured to say hello to him. So there shouldn't, in public places, I think this is really not a good idea. Privately, yes. You can bathe his feet, you can bathe his head, you can do anything you want with him. Yeah.
Just commenting the same thing, because it should not be forced, why should be suppressed? I attended the thing like that in ISKCON temple, where the ISKCON guru came, not mine. And they also washed his feet. And what I could see, it was not his disciples who remained there. And I was very happy to participate. And it was very deepening our relationship. It's not like
Well, the main thing is not in the temple room. That's an ISKCON law. Only on the Guru's Vyasa Puja day can you do that. It could be done somewhere else. For example, when I go to Fiji, where I think the majority of devotees now are my disciples, and we have a reception, then we go somewhere else for the, foot bathing or reception or whatever it is. They want to do it in the temple room. I said, no, it's not appropriate to do it in the temple room. Even Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to tell you the truth, got upset when this Bengali Vaishnava was bathing his feet in the Gundicha temple when they were washing the Gundicha temple. He got very upset with him. He said, in the Lord's temple, you were doing this. So, I wouldn't want to do it in the temple, personally, and it is a GBC rule. And we should understand the purpose behind the GBC rules. There's plenty of other places where you can bathe someone's feet. Isn't it? Usually, going to the room where the guru is staying and the disciples or whoever wants to go in there. And I just think we should follow that rule because it has a purpose behind it. Some people, sometimes if we glorify a Vaishnava, which is wonderful, and someone else feels forced or someone else feels excluded, then we're going to be offending other Vaishnavas. It happens sometimes. I remember, I'm going to give an example when the 11 gurus were appointed. They were glorified as being the next step in the disciplic succession. In fact, on the altar in Sridhar Mayapur, there was actually a tree. It was Prabhupada at the top of the tree. I think it was the top, or whatever it was. And then all the branches had these 11 people on it. And the message I got from seeing that was not that I was envious of them. You know, at that point, I had no desire to be a guru. I was just saying, you know, who cares? But the message I got was that you're not really a member of the disciplic succession. You know, you have to understand, people take messages in a very subtle form from things that we don't intend. And I was very pained, and it was a little traumatic for me, and for a lot of other devotees. You know, when I talked to them about it, we have to be very sensitive to other people's feelings. I mean, I'll tell you another point. When Prabhupada left the planet, it's another traumatic experience I had, therapeutic time for me. So when Prabhupada left the planet, when he's getting ready to leave the planet, Prabhupada wanted all the disciples with him. He said they should all close down the temples even. It didn't matter. Let them all be with me, Prabhupada said. But that was not communicated with the devotees in general. What was said to the devotees in general, and to me in particular, was that Prabhupada only wanted to be with those devotees who he knew. Can you imagine how painful that is? For a disciple, someone who's been worshipping Prabhupada for the last 10, 11, 12 years, whatever it was. And, you know, Prabhupada's your father, eternal father, and only the devotees you knew. And it was just, to me, it was like having someone stick a knife in my heart. And I would have gone to India immediately, but I was stopped for that reason. So I think we have to be sensitive to everybody. Any other questions about this before we move on? Yes?
This previous
Previous one. Let's see if I can get back to the previous one. Yeah?
things happened in Zagreb recently. There is one person named Sadhu Maharaj.
Yes.
And he acts as a guru. And he formerly, before he was a disciple of one Ishmael. Now he's. And one young Mataji who also used to visit our temple, she was invited to their gathering, and she was allowed to wash feet of this person, and she called her Priya.
Priya, dear.
So, please, can you...
Yeah. So what's the question?
How to understand all this?
Sounds like a pastime. It's beyond my ability to understand these things. It was outside of ISKCON, so whatever they do, I can only answer for those things in ISKCON. But the ladies shouldn't be bathing the men's feet. And I guess that sometimes if there's someone's house, they can pour the water 20 meters away. Not really, I'm just joking. But, you know, anyway. Whatever they do there, they do there. It's not my business to comment on it. Yeah, so she basically should have gone to our ceremonies to worship Prabhupada and whether we find who is a follower of Prabhupada. And here's another one, Vyasa Puja ceremony. It's a big one. We should all try to write offerings to Srila Prabhupada. Why do we write offerings? Because we're thanking Prabhupada for what he's done for us. It helps connect us to Srila Prabhupada. Not only the GBC or the sannyasis or the temple presidents write offerings, we should all write offerings and speak offerings. Some temples it's not practical for everyone to speak the offering because it's so big. But in general, the devotees should get a chance to speak their realizations in relationship to Srila Prabhupada. And preeminent means it's the biggest Vyasa Puja. Not that it's smaller than the local guru's Vyasa Puja. It's very important, and it's the guru's responsibility and the temple president's responsibility and the GBC's responsibility to make sure this happens. So, ISKCON, Siksha and Diksha Gurus, even Siksha Gurus can have a Vyasa Puja on once a year on ISKCON property on his or her Vyasa Puja day. That can be held in the temple. Just once a year. What we used to have in ISKCON, when we had the zonal acharyas, was a rolling Vyasa Puja. Rolling means it would go on for 2 months. I mean, it's pretty good to make it, as far as making money is concerned. That means, let's say if you had an international guru, you'd have one Vyasa Puja in Zagreb, then go to Ljubljana, another one, come to the camp, there'd be another one. Then he'd go fly to America, have 3 or 4 in America, and it was nice, actually. No, I didn't do that. And then some people, to get around this resolution, you know what they did? Does anyone know what they did to get around this resolution to have more than one Vyasa Puja a year? Then they started to have Vyasa Puja Smarna. Smarna means to remember the Vyasa Puja. So, what you can do, if everybody doesn't get a chance to read their offerings to you, you can be in their homes or in some private place and they can read their offerings on some other day. But the ceremony should only be 1 day a year. Okay? Is any questions about that? Yes.
Kad sam bio u jednom hramu u Irskoj, prisustvovao sam Vyasa Puji Šrila Prabhupada. I onda smo imali veliku knjigu na kojoj su bile napisane sve ponude koje naši duhovni učitelji napišu Šrila Prabhupada.
When I was in Ireland, I was in a temple where they held Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja, and they had a big book with the offerings of all our ISKCON gurus to Srila Prabhupada.
Naš standard je bio da prije nego što kažemo našu ponudu Srila Prabhupadu, prvo pročitamo ponudu koju je naš duhovni učitelj napisao Srila Prabhupadu.
And our standard was, before reading our own Vyasa Puja offering, we were supposed to read our Diksha Guru's offering to Srila Prabhupada.
Tad nisam stigao pitati zašto se to radi i baš me zanima šta je svrha toga.
At that time, I didn't have the opportunity to ask what the reason was behind it, what was the purpose of this protocol.
I don't know what their reasoning was, but it's actually a very good procedure to read your guru's offering to Srila Prabhupada first. To see your guru in relationship to Srila Prabhupada, to see your guru as a servant of Srila Prabhupada. But it's a very good procedure. Okay. Yes.
Ja bih htjela da pitam Guru Maharađa, pošto dešava se da mnogi učenici nemaju priliku da dođu na Vyasa Puju svom guru, ili je to daleko, ili već situacija neka. Da li, ja se generalno slažem sa tom jednom proslavom, koja je sasvim u redu, ali da li kada dođe ovako, recimo, poseti nas ili nešto, može nešto da se obeleži u tom nekom smislu za one učenike koji nisu bili u prilici da posete Vyasa Puju? Imam još jedno, izvini, samo odmah.
Generally speaking, I agree with this rule once a year Vyasa Puja, but for some reason, maybe it's too far away, or whatever reason, we cannot attend our Guru's Vyasa Puja. So is it possible, can we, the disciples of our Diksha Guru, when he comes to our region, to our city, have some kind of a celebration to mark his coming, us seeing him? Can we have some kind of celebration to mark that?
Yes, it can be a private celebration where you can actually speak words of glorification, but it's not the formal Vyasa Puja that occurs once a year in the temple.
Drugo pitanje u vezi sa tih 11 gurua, Zanima me koliko je njih od tada ostalo, kakve su se promene kod njih dogodile, da li su oni shvatili suštinski gde su i zašto su bile greške učinjene i šta se radi i koliko su sada voljni da komuniciraju, da se to promeni, da li drže tvrdo tu neku svoju struju koju su osnovali posle odlaska Šrila Prabhupada ili su se prilagodili promenama.
And about these 11 gurus that you mentioned, I'm interested in how many of them remain, and have they realized, actually did they realize in the past where and why mistakes happened, and did they get reformed, and after this system that they had?
That's a whole other class. Yeah, Ravindra Swarup Prabhu has given an elaborate seminar about that. And I invite you to listen to the internet and hear about the reform. I mean, they all tried their best to serve Prabhupada. Because we were all like 20, 25 years old, we didn't really understand how to reply, but these are all very sincere personalities. So we don't want to respect these people, disrespect them. So. Okay, let's go quickly because we don't have a lot of time. So Vyasa Puja ceremonies, obviously, Puja ceremonies should be less elaborate than Srila Prabhupada's. And as far as the publication of the books, it should only be for Srila Prabhupada. We used to have bigger books published for the gurus than we had for Srila Prabhupada many years ago. Herein lies the secret of Vyasa Puja. When we meditate on the transcendental pastimes of the absolute Godhead, we are proud to feel we are His eternal servitors and become jubilant and dance with joy. All glories to my divine Master, for it is He who, out of His unceasing flow of mercy, stirred up within us such a movement of eternal existence. Let us bow down at His lotus feet. That's Srila Prabhupada's homage. And of course, those who are my direct devotees are not, this is Krishna speaking for the Adi Purana, are not my devotees, but those are my devotees of my servant. Devotees of my devotees are factually my devotees. Gopi Bharata Pada Kamala, Dasa, Dasa, Dasani Dasa. And so that is the Guru Puja. So now we'll go on to the next slide, which is Guru Seva, which is actually very short. Yeah, good. Serving the Guru. Any questions? Yeah.
My question is, if something like this happens, who is in charge to correct it?
Something like someone violates one of the rules?
Well, one of these things that happen.
Then there's several things you can do. Is you can call up or contact your local GBC. You can contact the ISKCON ombudsperson. The ombudsperson generally deals with things in a very sensitive way, keeps the comments confidential, and it's usually I would prefer to deal with it like that. Use the ISKCON ombudsperson or the GBC. The GBCs tend to be a little more sensitive now than we were in the past. So so inform them. And don't come out in the middle of the Vyasa Puja or the improper ceremony and say, hey, this is against ISKCON law. Stop. Don't touch his feet. Or you come with your camera. Put it on some website like that, Facebook. There's a way to deal with it confidentially. I mean, all of the devotees I know in ISKCON, the gurus, they're all very, very much into keeping Prabhupada at the center. And they're cooperative, so it's not a problem. Okay, so now we go on to Guru Seva. Seva means service to the Guru. It's called Lesson 9, Guru Seva. If you purchase something, you got to pay for it. Of course, it's called Seva. Dedicate your life for a service you cannot pay. What have you got to pay to a spiritual master? So in other words, we have a debt that's unlimited. You can never satisfy that debt. It's like having a mortgage on your apartment that's unlimited. You got to pay it eternally. So that's not a bad thing, because we're all eternal servants of His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. So we should want to serve Him eternally. And serving Him means serving His mission, which means preaching Krishna consciousness in every town and village. That will satisfy the Guru and His Supreme Personality. That's the Parampara. And the spiritual master presents this to the disciples who can preach all over the world. It's the duty of every disciple to carry out the order of the qualified spiritual master and spread Lord Chaitanya's message all over the world. In other words, we're all preachers of Krishna consciousness. So we're not going to do the skits now. That will be for the select people. The 11 chosen. Anyway. Oh yeah, this course, for those of you who are not part of the select people, this course will also be given in Zagreb and in other places, Bosnia, Zagreb, and Rijeka, and it's continually being given in Ljubljana. So you can take this and do the skits and everything like that, but we've deliberately chosen to keep the smaller groups small, because if it's any bigger than that, you can't really do the exercises efficiently or effectively. So here's a very interesting statement. You write that you have desire to avail of my association again, but why do you forget that you're always in association with me? When you are helping my missionary activities, I'm always thinking of you, and you are always thinking of me. That is real association. Another time, Prabhupada said, if you want my lotus feet are always moving. That means preaching. So you got to move too if you want the dust of his feet. When I went on a morning walks with Srila Prabhupada, I would walk behind Prabhupada on the beach and take the sand in his footprints and throw the sand in my mouth. And then also when I served Prabhupada, I would take his remnants and not share them with anybody. I was creeping him. And eat all of them myself. I mean, what can I say? And there's an interesting story. One time a devotee was given a sweet ball by Srila Prabhupada, and he bowed down to thank Prabhupada. Another devotee grabbed it from his hand as he was bowing down. And Prabhupada looked at the devotee who stole the sweet ball, and he said, he's made great spiritual advancement. So that sort of mercy you should be very enthusiastic about. And steal. Mahaprasadam you can steal after the Guru takes, not before he takes. You have that misunderstanding. This Mahaprasadam, foot bathing water, foot dust, these are all very powerful substances that can actually make you Krishna conscious very quickly. You can take that. So another time, the Prabhupada went, sent a devotee to, where was it? Thailand, not North Korea, to Korea. It was Tribhuvan Maharaj. And Tribhuvan Maharaj said, you got to send someone with me. I'm alone. And Prabhupada said, you're not alone. I'm there. The whole disciplic succession is with you. Where's the question of being alone? Plus, you're a sannyasi. Sannyasi should be Abhaya Sattva Samshuddhi Jnana Yoga Vavasati. That means fearless. That's the qualities Krishna lists as sannyas qualities. Abhaya, freedom from fear, and then of course that's Prabhupada's name, Abhaya Chandanaravinda. Sattva Samshuddhi, established in Sattva Guru, that means transcendental Sattva Guru. Jnana Yoga Vavastiti. You must always be cultivating knowledge. Okay. And that's the end of that one. And one more, and then we get on to the fun exercises. Get to the real fun. And there's a lot in the booklets that when you all take the course eventually, or if you're taking the course now, there's a lot of different quotes that we didn't have time to go through in the student booklets. The next one is Guru, Bapu, and Vani Seva, which is actually also a very short thing. So there's many rules and regulations for Guru, Bapu, Seva. Let's go over Guru, Bapu. Bapu means body of the spiritual master. Physical body. Vani means words or instructions, and it also means example of the spiritual master. Because we're supposed to follow in the footsteps, not imitate the spiritual master as happened when Prabhupada left the planet. That is not good. But the footsteps or the mood of the spiritual master is important. Sadhu Sangha, famous verse from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Sashakoi, Lavamatra Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhihoi. One gets a little association with the pure devotee, all perfection is reached. Can anyone think of an example in the Bhagavatam where someone got a little association and became a great devotee as a result of that? Magrari and Narada Muni, another example. Narada Muni himself, 4 months, he took the remnants of the great sages, got initiation, and then it's interesting what happened to him. His mother passed away. And I was just reading a lecture by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. When one takes up the spiritual path, heavy things happen. And that makes one more attached to Krishna. He was saying this is part of the natural progress. Just like Queen Kunti prayed, Tatra Tatra Jagat Guru, let these things happen again and again. So, Apana Bharava Darshana, so I will not see repeated birth and death in this world. So, this is the translation of it. By a moment's association, that means 1/11th of a second of association with the pure devotee, one can attain all success. So the skits we're not going to do now. My dear Sanatan, although you were delivered from the CC of the entire universe, and although even the demigods and great saints are purified by touching you, is the characteristic of a devotee to observe and protect Vaishnava etiquette. So Sanatana Goswami, of course, wrote books, the Haribhakti Vilas, about Vaishnava etiquette. Maintenance of the Vaishnava etiquette is the ornament of a devotee. If one transgresses the laws of etiquette, people make fun of him, and thus he is vanquished in both this world and the next. By observing the etiquette, you have satisfied my mind. So there's a story in the Bhagavatam. Oh yeah, there's a statement in the Bhagavatam about something called Maryada Vyatikrama. That Maryada Vyatikrama means someone who oversteps Vaishnava etiquette. And Prabhupada says in his purport and also in the verse, it says someone who oversteps Vaishnava etiquette can never achieve Krishna's favor, can never become Krishna conscious. So we inquire from the Guru, as you know this verse from the Bhagavad Gita, I'm not going to recite it again. Therefore, one has to have a relationship where he can inquire from the Guru. That is, what service should I do? How can I perfect my spiritual life? How can I chant better? How can I advance more? And ultimately, as Srila Prabhupada said, how can I serve you? Prabhupada said that was the only question he ever asked his spiritual master. How can I serve you? So, but we can ask questions related to service. Our chanting is service, our cultivation of bhakti is service, and our helping the movement and assisting and serving the other devotees is service. So we can ask the Lord Guru, how can I do it better? How can I perfect my service? So there's questions in the Bhagavatam, but the question should not be in a challenging spirit. Hey, you got that wrong. I remember one time I was giving Bhagavatam class, and I said, just inadvertently, there's about 8,400,000 species of life. And one lady in the back said, "You are wrong, Maharaj. There's exactly 8,400,000 species of life." I'm sorry. You know, because instead of saying there are 8 million, I said there's about. Hare Krishna. So we have to be careful inquiring from the Guru. I mean, if you're looking for fault, you can find fault in Krishna. You know, even Gandhari, she found a lot of fault in Krishna. She said, why did you let this battle happen? And even she cursed Krishna after all of her sons were killed. And she cursed Krishna in the same way that my family was killed. My sons were killed. Your whole family will self-destruct too. And that's what happened. But that was Krishna's plan. So you have to be very, very careful about finding, it's like finding a spot in the moon. You know, you can look at the moon and appreciate the moon's brilliance and wonderfulness, and you can taste of the vegetables, or you can just say, hey, look at that stupid spot in the moon. So just be really careful in dealing with Krishna's devotees. Just more verses about the same thing. Inquisitive, to learn. In inquiries one makes should be strictly pertain to transcendental science. Yasu Shaya Uttamam. The word Uttama refers to that which is above material knowledge. I mean, sometimes the Guru may be expert in something else too. You can ask from him, like how to fix my car or something like that. He knows how to do it. I mean, he has some other knowledge in the service of Krishna. You can ask him. But don't involve him in political affairs. Who should I vote for in the next election, Gurudev? Or things like that. Yanavin, Tama means darkness in this material world, and Uttama means above Tama, transcendental. People are very interested generally in inquiring about mundane subject matters, but when one has lost such interest and is simply interested in transcendental subject matters, he is fit for being initiated. So, Prabhupada said, I'm not going to read this, but Prabhupada said he and his spiritual master were never separated. They were always connected. And one time Prabhupada was asked, do you ever feel separation from your spiritual master? You know how Prabhupada answered? He said, that question you do not need to ask. Because it's something very, very internal. So we're connected with the spiritual master. In the 4th canto, part 4, Srimad Bhagavatam, it states that when the spiritual master leaves the planet, one should take up the mission of the spiritual master, or if he doesn't do that, he should be ready to leave the body in the same way that as a chaste wife in the Santi rite would jump into the fire when the husband actually left this world. Unless one can take up, and if one who does that, the Bhagavatam says, he sees the super soul face to face. Read that section of the Bhagavatam, it's the Paranjani story. One who actually does that gets a chance to see super soul. So if you want it, well, don't wait until your spiritual master passes away. But specifically, Prabhupada gives that example, that if one takes up the mission of the spiritual master, one sees super soul face to face. Here's a Chaitanya Charitamrita. Prabhupada says the Bhagavad Gita example is the Vani of Lord Krishna. Although Lord Krishna was present personally 5,000 years ago and is no longer physically present from the materialistic point of view, the Bhagavad Gita continues. So here's Prabhupada's personal association with his Guru. He only associated with his Guru 4 or 5 times, but he says, I've never left his association, not even for a moment, because he is always following his instructions, and he has never felt any practical separation. He says, there are some of my godbrothers here in India who had constant personal association with Guru Maharaj, but who are neglecting his orders. This is a heavy thing for Prabhupada to say about his godbrothers. This is like the bug who is sitting on the lap of the king. He may be very puffed up by his position, but all he can succeed in doing is biting the king. So, Prabhupada is basically comparing the godbrothers who don't follow the order of the Guru, but who just hang around Guru groupies, so to speak, around the Guru. And sometimes they're just interested in getting the Guru's material assets. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur commented on that in regard to one of his disciples, and Prabhupada also repeated that. He was interested in the material assets of the Guru, in other words, the temple, whatever it was like that. But personal association is not so important as association through service. In other words, it's not that the most advanced devotee is he or she who has had the most physical association. The most advanced devotee may be the simple, humble pot washer in the temple who's never even met his Guru, but has taken the words of his Guru as his life and soul. Please be happy in separation. I am separated from my Guru Maharaj since 1936, but I am always with him so long as I work according to his direction. So we should all work together for satisfying Lord Krishna, and that way the feelings of separation will transform into transcendental bliss. Just like in Krishna's pastimes, the gopis' feelings of separation connect them. They're the most intense way to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the most intense connecting way to connect with the Guru is to serve him in separation, doing his mission, and feeling his presence. And I can tell you practically, I can feel Prabhupada's presence when I'm serving his mission. Prabhupada is there for me. Okay? So I think that's the end of that chapter. Let's see if there's anything else. There's certain rules of etiquette that actually I think are very important before we end this chapter and go on to the exercise. These rules of etiquette, Vani continues forever. So let me just read some of these rules of etiquette. That when we see the Guru, we pay dandavats. What's a dandavat?
Prostrate your
Flat out, like a stick. Dandavat. Just don't be a dandavat disciple. That means that's all you do. And when the Guru approaches, we should face him. Don't turn your back to the Guru. These are different items of etiquette that are important to follow. Don't leave without asking his permission. When you say his name, just be very attentive at it. Don't try to imitate him. I mean, I know sometimes people try to imitate Prabhupada, and it's actually not nice. It's disrespectful to imitate the Guru. Of course, you can try to chant japa like Prabhupada does. I mean, sometimes I try to do that when I'm chanting japa like Prabhupada does. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. So I listen to Prabhupada's japa tape and I try to do that, but it's not like imitating him. It's trying to get into the same mood and imbibe Prabhupada's spirit when he's chanting. Here's a good one. He should take his words very seriously. If he's punished by the spiritual master, he should not be upset with it. And of course, there's that story, interesting story of Hridaya Chaitanya chastising this devotee Shaimananda. Does everybody know that story? That Hridaya Chaitanya was very upset with his disciple because Shaimananda had entered into a different ras than his Guru was. His Guru had a ras of being a coward boy. He was given this name by Srimati Radharani and Jiva Goswami, and he had special tilak, different than his Guru had given him, because that was given by Radharani. And the Guru got so upset with him, he hit him. And the disciple didn't do anything. He didn't say, Gurudev, you're Maya. I'm right, I saw Radharani, even though he did see Radharani. He left it up to Krishna to hit his Guru. So that night, what happened is that Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, came to Hridaya Chaitanya, and he was covered with, with blood and everything like that. He said, how come you're beating me? Because you're beating this personality, who's your disciple, but actually he's faultless. And then Hridaya Chaitanya apologized to his disciple. But it's not our business to correct the spiritual master. We shouldn't want to hear criticism of the spiritual master. Don't sit on the spiritual master's garland, bed, shoes, asana. Shadow is kind of hard. I know it says shadow here, but that's really hard. You know, what are you going to do? You know, I've been walking next to Prabhupada. I mean, I have to say this. You know, what can you do? You walk in, it's early morning, the shadow is really long. Dancing, you know, keep away from the shadow. So, I mean, try your best, but I think that's a little bit too much. Don't spread your legs, make disrespectful noises, don't... The Guru's giving you some instruction, I think you should chant it. If you feel like going to hold it in. Don't worship others in the presence of the spiritual master. Don't give diksha or scriptural instructions if the spiritual master is present, unless the spiritual master tells you to do that. Because Prabhupada sometimes would tell his disciples, like the spiritual master's orders actually supersede items of etiquette. Like in the case of Govinda, who was Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's servant, Govinda was Lord Chaitanya's godbrother. And godbrothers generally are not supposed to become the servants of their godbrother. But he was ordered to do that by Ishwara Puri, so that superseded, that was more important than an item of etiquette. So Prabhupada sometimes would tell a disciple, you give Bhagavatam class, and I'm going to sit here and listen to you. He didn't do that with me. I would have been nervous as anything. I wouldn't have been able to speak. But Prabhupada was sitting there and I had to speak. I don't think I could do it. But he did that with some devotees. And Prabhupada, it was interesting when Prabhupada did, he would correct their pronunciations. Sometimes say, no, like that. I mean, we really had a fearful attitude towards Prabhupada, which was good. That was a very good attitude. Don't give orders to the spiritual master. That's a good one. Gurudev, I want my prasadam now. Always obey him. And treat the spiritual master with respect. Treat the spiritual master's godbrothers with equal respect. And if the spiritual master is married, you treat his wife, son, and relatives with great respect. And those are some of the items of etiquette, and those are important to observe. You may say they're external, but they help us develop the right consciousness and help us avoid committing offenses against great Vaishnavas. Very important. Etiquette is extremely etiquette. There's a whole other course which I give on Vaishnava etiquette, Vaishnava behavior, and it makes a society stable. And it keeps us in the right consciousness. So any questions or comments before we end this particular section? Yes?
Sometimes when we meet devotees, first time with someone, first question they ask us, who is your guru? But I also heard that it's against etiquette to reveal your guru is something very personal. Is that something?
Well, yes, you shouldn't be revealing. Go around and say, hey, my guru is Gurupad. But you know, if someone asks you an ordinary question, who you were initiated by, I'm not supposed to reveal it. It's a secret. You're not supposed to be your guru, your mantra. I mean, there are injunctions like that. You don't go around just like with a t-shirt. The lotus feet of Gurupad are my only shelter. I don't like t-shirts like that. Even with Prabhupada. Because what do you do with t-shirts? You put them in the washing machine with your socks. And so the guru gets a chance to go swimming with your socks. Because what the guru's... That's another item of etiquette I just did mention. The guru's picture and the items that he used are all sacred. He's present in his picture. So if the picture goes on the floor, I mean, it's an offense. So the picture is also on your shirt or on your bead bag, so be very careful how you treat that. I mean, you should... And generally, yes, we shouldn't have a picture of our guru publicly, you know, walking around. You know. It's just, you know, it's supposed to be, you know, kept in your heart. But if someone asks you the question, who are you initiated by? Can't tell you. You he's over there. I won't mention his name. So, use your discretion in that regard, because otherwise it comes out ridiculous. Yeah.
This essay written by... There's one essay written by Babu. He's now sannyas.
Outside of this.
He wrote this essay about Prabhupada. Maybe you are familiar with that.
I haven't read that essay, no. I know Babu, and he's a friend, even though he's outside of ISKCON. Actually, I just saw him 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. So I know him,
You know the essay he wrote about Prabhupada?
I haven't read the essay, but maybe you can give it to me later.
About Prabhupada's spiritual position, taking quotes and little sentences and all this about his Swarupa. And I want to ask you.
No, one should never try to guess the Swarupa of a spiritual master.
I mean, he didn't guess, in one sense, because he took the quotes.
Now, all that is coming from the Gaudiya Math influence, where one of the acharyas in the Gaudiya Math, I'm not going to mention names because I don't want to commit offenses, stated that Prabhupada had a particular Swarup. And he was taking evidence of the type of deities that were installed. I'm familiar with the arguments because I met with this Gaudiya Math guru many years ago before he passed away. So I'm pretty familiar with all the arguments. But it's not our business. It's not our business. Why is it our business to try to guess Prabhupada's Swarup? I mean, how will that help us? When we become self-realized, we'll go back to the spiritual world, we'll understand who Prabhupada is in the spiritual world. But right now, what is the difference? Like with my disciples, if I tell them I'm a cow in the spiritual world, that's my Swarup. So I'm revealing my Swarup. So what are they going to do? Do you have any cowbells? I don't understand how we'll change their life. Guru's coming. Ding, ding, ding. Or ankle bells if I'm a gopi. I gotta have Anuradha teach me how to dance. So it really is, it's not our business to intrude unless the Guru, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur revealed his spiritual identity. But unless the Guru reveals his identity, it's really not our business to poke our nose into that. So Prabhupada would have told us. But what are you going to do about it? We still have to preach. We still have to do everything else in Krishna consciousness. So, and then we get into the soul sahaja thing, my identity. I mean, I'm just speaking to one of my god siblings the other day, and she was telling me, yes, we have this whole Gopi Baba group that we talk about, and one person's a follower of Chandravali, and the other person is a follower of Vishaka. And I said, I'm just a follower of Maya, so what am I going to do that? Just trying to get out of Maya. So I think we have to, if it's useful, yes, it'll help me in my devotional, it won't. It's intrusive. I wouldn't want someone trying, if you would put yourself not in Prabhupada's position, but in the position of a guru, would you want disciples trying to take your quotes and trying to figure out, like with my disciple, he worships Giriraj. And he has Radharani next to Giriraj. And he has Gunjamala on his Giriraj. What does it mean? I don't want people doing that with me. It's my own personal business. So I think it's intrusive, like Prabhupada said when he was asked this question I said before, do you ever feel separation from your spiritual master? He said, that question you do not need to ask. So why do we want to, what is the motive behind it? I'm not going to say what his motive is. I don't know what his motive is, and I don't want to commit offense against him. But Vaishnava. But I have no business doing such a thing. So yes. What is your spiritual identity?
What is then the proper? Because we see in our sampradaya that we have previous acharyas that we know what they are, the swarupis in the spiritual world. So the question is, what is the proper way of revealing someone's identity?
The proper way is your disciple to whom you're revealing your identity must be sufficiently advanced to understand how to deal with it in the spiritual world. Prabhupada understood that if he revealed this to us, we'd have more problems with Sahajism than we have now. And we certainly have a lot of problems with it in our society. Prabhupada said Sahajism would stop the preaching in the Krishna conscious movement. I was there in Los Angeles when they had this Gopi Baba Club. And they were singing, their theme song was Shri Rupa Manjari Pada. You know, the lotus feet of Shri Rupa Manjari. My goal. So, Prabhupada, they argued with Prabhupada. They came to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was livid. That means he was really angry. He says, what are you doing? He said, Prabhupada, we're just reading your books. And they were reading the Chaitanya Charitamrita. That's before we had all these other books translated. We're just reading about the gopis in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And Prabhupada got really angry. He said, my books are like a pharmacy or drugstore where there's many different drugs or medicines. But you need an expert doctor to tell you how to apply these medicines. You know, everything in his books is good. But if you concentrate on one part because you think you're more advanced than another part, or you ignore other parts, then you're not following the advice of the doctor. So Prabhupada, and then the devotees were so much in Maya, they said that Prabhupada was just getting angry because he wanted to pacify those sannyasis. You know, because there were sannyasis who complained. They said, oh, Prabhupada just playing for them. But Prabhupada agrees with us ultimately. Even though Prabhupada was extremely angry. So if you were to approach, or not just you, but if anyone were to approach Prabhupada and say, Prabhupada, who are you in the spiritual world? Whoo! I wouldn't want to be in the same room. I definitely, or you were to go to Prabhupada and say, Prabhupada, I do have all these quotes. It really shows your cowboy. Wow. It would be like a Brahmastra being fired at you from Prabhupada. So I think it's... You know, the other acharyas, they had their specific reasons, and their disciples. I mean, if you look at the people that they were generally initiating, they were generally from higher class families, or they were very cultured people. In the West, and forgive me, we're not very cultured people. I know you're going to hate me after this, but, you know, Americans have no culture, even less than Europeans. You have a little bit here, but in America, nothing. Zero. No etiquette, no culture. We don't even know which fork to use when we're eating or anything. So Prabhupada understood he's dealing with uncultured people. You know. Like he said, when there was a kirtan going on, and Prabhupada said, Narada Muni has come, and the devotee says, what is Narada Muni doing? And Prabhupada said, Narada Muni is laughing to see all the malachas dancing the chant. So, anyway, words of the wise is sufficient. So we have to be careful. There's etiquette between each other, too. You know, Prabhu. You know, Prabhu means master, respect. So when I address you, you know, Prabhu. Not Prabhu. Okay, one other question.
Ako postavimo sliku na svoj oltar nekog duhovnog učitelja koji nas inspiriše, kako to treba da izgleda? Gdje postaviti sliku?
If we set up a picture of a spiritual master who inspires us, how should it look like on the altar? Where should the picture be?
Where should the picture be? Make it 10 meters by 10 meters. So it covers the whole. Where should it be? It should be on a small, generally on a small table next to the altar. Like the GBC rule is. I mean, sometimes if you don't have a small table, you put it on the little corner of the altar. Yeah. I mean, we can do that with any Vaishnava who inspires us, even a god brother or god sister. Let's not just restrict it to dictionaries. I mean, if someone inspires us tremendously in Krishna consciousness. I mean, for example, at my altar, I have a personal altar in our temple in the United States. Does anyone know who I have on my altar besides Prabhupada? I have two other people on my altar. Not myself. Two other people. You probably know. No. Bhakti-tirtha Maharaj is on my altar. And who else? And Tamal Krishna Maharaj. They're both on my altar. And whenever I see it, anyway, I can't talk. It's really some emotions, which is not proper. Anyway, so whenever I see the pictures, I feel just like great feelings of love, devotion, and separation. So I'm doing it with my God brothers. Why shouldn't we do it with our, your God brothers too? Anyone who helps us in Krishna consciousness, anyone who's dedicated, we admire their service. They were both, and when I go to Mayapur, I offer respects to my God brothers' samadhis. Sridhar Maharaj was my friend. I mean, I just remember we had such a nice, friendly, joking relationship. He used to use my name to indicate an alcoholic beverage. You understand? Beer, Krishna beer. So, and we would embrace. So, and then Tamal Krishna Maharaj, Gora Govinda Maharaj, who I knew we were not in such a close relationship, but many of them I had very close relationships with. I love to see their pictures around. It reminds me of my friends, my close associates, and people who inspire me in Krishna consciousness. Why not do that? Why just stick to your Diksha Guru? We have a whole society of wonderful Vaishnavas. So start that, and then we'll have better relationships with each other, too. Okay, I think we have to go. Right, so it's time for the next session. Thank you very much. All glory is to His divine grace. Shila Prabhupada, Shila Prabhupada.